Coding Challenge Review, Intermediate, 17th of January. So, question number 1. Find the words in capitals. So we have a sentence and we want to find the first capital word. So, how many arguments do we have? One, correct. So how do we call the argument? Sentences in plural. Plural or singular? Singular, right? One sentence. So, based on that, we want to find which word is in capitals, right? Please note that the word will be in capitals if all the letters, all the characters are in capitals, right? So, for example, in that particular case, there are no capital words because, even though the first one starts with a capital, the second one is not a capital, right? Cool. So, how do we do that? Well, technically speaking, correct. The first thing I'm going to do is to do sentence.split empty string?
No, space.
Space, because we want to separate by words, right?
Yeah.
Look at what I'm doing. I'm already putting every action on a new line. So first of all, we split the sentence, and then I'll try to find word in capitals. So, argument name of find. Word. I like that. And then how do we check if a word is in capital or not? Word to uppercase. Correct. Will this work?
No.
Why?
Because it didn't return the empty string.
It was first again?
It didn't return the empty string.
It didn't return the empty string, correct. So the first two I believe will work, but in this case, what are we returning if there are no capital words?
The empty string.
What?
The empty string.
Yeah, but what at the moment? This algorithm, what is the algorithm returning?
It was an array.
An array. Why an array?
No.
It's space, yeah. No. You believe it's space, right?
Words with upper letter.
So if we don't have any word in capitals, what will this function return? Undefined. That's it. Remember, guys, that's a beginner thing, eh? If find doesn't find anything, it returns undefined. That's why the last example will fail, because unfortunately, what we want is to return an empty string. How do we control that? How can we make sure that if we don't have anything, we return an empty string? A ternary, if else.
Or no, you can return or put the empty.
Yeah, correct. We can do that, right?
Yeah.
Pipe, double pipe.
Oh, you can put it already there. Wow.
Yeah, of course. We can make it inline, right? So I'll try to find a word in capitals. If I found it, return it. If not, then empty string, right? And then that actually works with no elegance issues, right? So let me see if anyone else wants to join the session. Perfect. So yeah. And then, so let's see what you did, guys. So Jeff, he did pretty much the same thing. Interestingly, this is something he used to do all the time, which is good. I'm not against that, of course not. So you see what he did, right? So he essentially created a function to determine whether the word is in capitals or not, right? Daniel, pretty much the same thing. He's using a long version of he created a variable. This is even a bit more readable in my opinion, because he tries to get the word in capital. What's, Daniel? Right. So he tries to get the word in capitals, and then if he got it, he returns it. If not, he returns an empty string. That's good. I believe, Daniel, however, you could put that inline, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
What else? Richard, he used a different approach.
Very long-winded.
Yeah, so let me try to see what Richard did. So he used a for loop. Here you go. Here you go. So with the for loop, so essentially he's capturing all the words on the sentence, and then as soon as one word is capital, it will be returned. Right? Yeah, that's correct. And then we have the default case, right? If we haven't returned anything yet, then return an empty string, right? So I have two subtle complaints about Richard's solution. Even though it's correct, it's perfectly fine. The first one, which is pretty obvious, is we are mixing single and double quotes, right? There is no reason for that. Stick either to double or single, but don't mix them. And the second, again, still a very subtle thing, is I find a bit aggressive this strategy because we're in the middle of a loop, and suddenly in the middle of the loop we'll abort, we'll break the execution by returning the result. I find this a bit hard, but still that's absolutely fine. And then, so who else? Itamar, same thing. Create a new variable, split, find, right? Rafa, same thing. He created two variables. So do you know why having multiple variables is a good strategy sometimes? Correct, for debugging purposes, because if something doesn't work as expected, I can evaluate the value of each variable, right? I'm not personally a big fan of this pattern, but I reckon it's very useful for this kind of scenarios where we want to inspect the value of each variable. Then Mo, again, very similar to Rafa. Ashley, same thing, right? Yeah. So why Poppy solutions didn't work?
Because she didn't split.
So first of all, she forgot to split. Also, remember two uppercases an array. No, an array, no, a method, sorry, not an array. So we need to invoke it, right? And eventually we'll have to control the case where we don't have any word in capital by returning an empty string, right? Yep. I'll see in a minute. Where are you, Dave? Did they escape you? Dave, you are, yeah. So first of all, Dave got lots of penalties because of the comments. But apart from that, so string to arrays, he gets the array, then what's that? String to array. No, that doesn't make sense. So a string to array is an array. An array doesn't have the two uppercase method. Two uppercase only apply on a string. You have a string, you capitalize it, right? But here you're trying to convert to capital an array, which doesn't make sense. ACL, so that's interesting because ACL got some nice penalties here.
Yeah.
Why, ACL?
I know now. Because the split and find should be under the split.
Correct. So first of all, indentation, it may be, to be honest, it's a bit hard to say. It looks like you're using spaces. So just by using spaces, you'll get several penalties, right? And anyway, split and find, they should be aligned in the same logical vertical line, right? Also, here indentation is horrible. I struggle to understand that line. Return work in capital. It looks like this return statement belongs to the find, right? But it doesn't. So return should be clearly dropped here on the left, right? Because this, it's not nested to anything. It's just a single instruction. It doesn't belong to split. It doesn't belong to find. It's just a separate instruction, right? So it should be put here. And even if you don't really understand why, the thing is the elegance console will tell you the indentation on line number 6 is wrong. Please fix it, right? It should be 1 tab instead of 4. It will tell you. And then we got Megan, which pretty much did the same thing using a classic JavaScript function, right? But that's pretty much the same thing. As you already know, I'm not a big fan of empty lines, right? Some developers, they say, they help to make your code more readable. If you need empty lines to make your code readable, it's because your code is not readable enough, right? In that case, what you need to do is to split your logic across smaller functions, not to add break lines, right? Any question, guys? No? Question number 2. Find the top character. I think this was the most complicated one, right? Most of you struggled trying to get the right answer, even though some of you managed to get the correct solution. So, we have a list of characters, and we want to find which is the top one. How do we know the top one? Well, because we have a list of scores, and then we want to get what? The average, I believe, right? The average, correct. So we need to first of all calculate the average, then find which has the top average score, and eventually return his or her name. That's pretty much the idea, right? So the very first thing I'm going to do is to transform this array into another array of the same size, of the same length, but I want to replace scores with the average score. Which method in JavaScript transforms one array into another one of the same size? Map, exactly. So, first of all, argument name. Character or characters? Characters. It's a list, right? Correct. And then, I'm going to return something straight away. So, return characters.map, that's correct. We receive a character, right? And then for each character, that's the important thing. I am going to return a object, so the name will be the same. So name, how do I get the name here?
Character.name.
Correct, character.name. And then the score.
Character.score.
Character.score?
Scores.
Scores?
Yeah.
Then what's the point of doing map, right? We have one array and we return the same array. Average. We need to calculate the average, guys. Right? I'm going to create a function to calculate the average score of each character, right?
And then we score the name of the,
Yep.
the name of the thing.
Yep, that's correct. I'll just reduce to calculate the average. So I create a function, a generic function called getAverage, which receives a list of numbers. And the function will simply return numbers.reduce average, comma, score, and it will return average plus score divided by numbers.length. That's correct. Do we need a default value here? No, Hazel? All right. I was going to get to remove your points today, right? All right. You keep the points. Right. We need a default value. If you don't really understand why, this is literally the intermediate challenge in the board, right? So we'll do a specific workshop to explain this function and other breakpoints and all these things you like tomorrow. So hopefully, unless we did something wrong, we now have a function, getAverage, that receives a list of numbers and it gives us the average of out of these numbers, right? So we can just invoke it like that, right? Right, so after running map, hopefully we'll have an array with the average score of each character. But now I want the top one. How do I know which one is the top one? Well, I need to sort the array. So I'm going to tidy up a bit. So I do the map. After doing map, I have another array, so I can do sort. And sort will essentially receive how many arguments sort receives, guys? 2. Correct. It's character A, comma, character B. And then, if you remember, sort will determine the order of the elements by, correct, using minus. So if I do character A minus character B, does that make any sense?
No, have to check.
Yes, no?
No.
Why not? Why yes?
This is the structure of this.
Yeah, but what's character A? Is it a string, a number, an object, an array, a function, a boolean? What's that? It's a string? No, it's not a string. It is an object. Correct. We have an array of objects. So that's the object. It doesn't make sense to add or subtract objects. What do we need to check here? Not the entire object. Which property of the object do we want to check? The score. Score or scores? In plural. Score or scores? Why?
It's coming from the original array of characters.
Yeah, but that's wrong. That doesn't exist anymore. Look. Score in singular. We use map to create a new array of objects. Each object on that array will have these two properties, name and score. Scores doesn't exist anymore. Score and score. So will this algorithm sort the elements from the smaller to the biggest number or vice versa?
I think so, no. You have to change.
I mean, yeah.
Ascending, isn't it?
This is descending or ascending?
This is ascending.
This is ascending, that's correct. Is that what we want?
No.
No, we want the other way around. We want the top one first, right?
Is there a way to where you can put like a minus in front of character A and plus there, like what?
Just swap them.
Just swap them. Look. Wait.
No, swap the actual operators, not the actual characters.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want,
Does
right?
that work?
Yeah, of course, yes. Right. So if we do that, we'll be sorting the array descendantly. So the highest number will go first, which is what we want, right? Because now, essentially, how can we get now the name of the top character? Dot name. What do you think?
So we need the first element.
That's correct. Who is that? Is that Jonan?
Jonan.
Yes, Jonan is absolutely right. Sort will return another array. How do we get the first element of the array? Dot find. Dot find what? Square bracket 0. Correct. Correct. So, Jonan, do you mind muting yourself unless you want to participate again?
Oh, yeah. So
Thank you, mate. Cheers. Right. So, will this work? Yes or no? Any elegance issue?
Yeah, I think so on line 6, missing semicolon.
That's a good point. On line 6, missing semicolon.
Line 6? No, sorry.
Sorry. Line 6? Line 6?
Line 8.
Wait a minute.
700%.
7,
700%, but about the line.
8? Do we need a semicolon line number 8? No, because we are still chaining. If you do a semicolon, you break it all, right? But definitely, Daniel is right. Line number 7, we need a semicolon.
I'm not sure about the line 6. I think
Line 6, no, because that's an object. You cannot do a semicolon inside of the object, right? So, I'm 60% sure it will work, but we'll probably get some penalty issues because the get top character function is quite long, right? Let's see what happened. Oh, no, it worked. It's on the very limit, right? It's on the very limit, but it's fine, right? So that worked, and then no elegance issues, right? So we got 100% on this question. Any issue? No? Okay, so what you did here, guys? So in here, this is question number 2, I believe. So get top character. So Daniel literally did the same thing, right? Literally the same thing, right? That's good. So Richard that's very clean. Look at what Richard did. He did something a bit different. So first of all, he's sorting the results first. So he has a compare function. Richard, interestingly, even though the solution is very elegant, he got an elegance penalty here because he missed the space between A and B. And apart from that, so he, so I just have one very important but not obvious concern about Richard's solution. Performance. So, let me show you why. What we did is, first of all, we calculated the average of each character. So we calculate the average 3 times. The problem, and again, I like the solution, I think it's very elegant, so the problem is not that obvious, is, first of all, he's not comparing against the average, he's comparing against the total, right? In that case, it works because all the elements, all the characters have the same number of scores, right? But if one of the elements, for example, will have one score of 100, that will be the top character, right? If one character has simply one element on the array, one score of 100, that will be the top character. But however, according to Richard's solutions, that couldn't be the top one because he's calculating the total. But the other problem I see is, regardless of whether we calculate the total or the average, don't forget that the sort function will run multiple times because we need to compare every single pair of values of the array, right, to determine the order. Because of that, the compare function will run lots of times, like 2 power 3 or something like that. I don't know at the moment, right? But this is something that should be quite easy to calculate. The bigger the array is, right, the cost of the function will grow exponentially. Does that make sense, Rich?
No.
No? So look, you did all the calculations inside of the sort function. We shouldn't do that. Because the sort function, your compare function, may run hundreds of times. And every time we run the compare function, you are calculating the total. Again, and again. So there is no need to calculate the total every time you compare 2 pairs of characters. We can do that upfront. First get the total or the average. And once you have calculated the average just once for each character, then sort the array. I mean, if anyone still arguing that theory, I recommend you to go to DevTools, literally copy this snippet, and check how many times the compare function will run. Lots of times, right?
It's hard to understand this function.
Well, don't get me wrong, I like it. I think what Richard did is very elegant. And because now the number of elements we need to sort is very small, you know, in terms of performance, it's not a big deal. They will be pretty much the same. But thinking about scalability, about complex apps, we should try to minimize the impact of redundant algorithms, like calculating the total.
Sorry, did you show solution there? No, nothing, sorry.
Right, so then we got Itamar. Interestingly, Itamar now is using, what's the name of this case, guys? Wait a minute, where is it? That's a snake case, right? Not sure why Itamar did that. Still valid. It feels a bit PHP, right? Yeah, speaking in JavaScript, we use camel case, but again, still correct. So what he did is, he iterates on the list of characters. Then, for each character, I see nothing. Sorry, give me a second. So for each character, he gets the total. So score is the average, right? Right. So what he does is he's looping on the array of characters. For each character, he gets the total. and then he checks if the new character score is above the current highest score. If that's the case, he changes the value of the top character. Yeah, that's interesting as well. This is quite efficient because now we're calculating the average just once for each character, not multiple times. What else? Finally, we got Mo. So Mo, what he did here is it's pretty much the same thing I did, I believe, right? So he first of all gets a new array with the average score of each character. Eventually he sorts the array, he points to the first element and returns his or her name. Yeah, that's all good. I'm going to skip the red ones because otherwise that will take forever, right? So
What if we put 1 instead of 0 in this?
why you do one
Right.
square brackets? So you mean here?
Yeah.
Why don't you do 1?
For example.
Because if you put 1, that will return the second highest character, second top character, right? We want the first one, the top one.
Ah, I see.
Arrays start at index 0, right? Correct. What else? Any question?
Yeah, could I just ask one, which is, yeah, so you've done the sort. Is that not asking you to do it? If I looked at this, I'd have done the averages like you did,
Yep.
but tried to find the highest average,
Yep.
and then like the math.max or something.
Math.max. No, but math.max doesn't make sense because math.max makes sense when you want to calculate the maximum value out of a comma separated list of numbers. This is not what we have here. We have a different data structure, I'm afraid. You know.
So there's no way to. Well, could you even like use the? Maybe this is too complicated, but then use the rest operator to get all the averages into one like array, then find the max of them,
But
and then.
But that's
find-
wrong. That's wrong, Jonah. Because we don't want the max. That's the entire problem. It's a fundamental issue of understanding what the expectations are. We don't want the maximum. We want the average.
No. I'm saying do the average first.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Then
okay.
you've got and do your map to get the new
Yeah.
array.
Correct. Yeah.
And then pull out the averages, so there'll be 3 averages.
That's correct.
And then find the max of those averages,
Correct. Yes.
and then use the find method to find the object.
That's correct. Yeah. Of course. Yes, you can do that like that. But don't you think that's a bit more complicated?
Don't know.
Yeah, but that's technically speaking correct. So we can do the map to get the average, then we can use max to get the maximum number of all the average, and then we'll probably need to use find to loop again on the array and find who is the owner of that max average score. Fair enough? Yeah, we can do that.
It's just because sort seems to do it seems like quite expensive programming. You know, it seems to have to sort every single thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe.
No, yeah, that's a good point. We could compare performance, but yeah, that's true. So that approach may be a bit more performant. Yes.
In this case, what we want is the highest average score, isn't it? So, do we really have to count the average?
Yeah, of course. If you don't calculate the average, you don't know which one is the highest one, right?
But the highest one is the highest total anyway, isn't it? Or no?
By coincidence. So in this particular example, because all the characters have the same number of scores, not even. Look, in this example, the highest number is Kim, but the highest average is Donald. No, sorry, the highest one is Donald. I mean,
But the total will be the highest, so the highest...
no, that's not true.
the
That's
highest
not true.
total.
That's not
Why?
true. That's not true. I'll show you an example. In this case, yes. But we should try to create robust functions that work even if we change the data. So if my data model is, I'm typing now at the bottom, if what I have is 3, 4, and 2, correct, right? So now I have another character with score number 5, for example. So in the first case, average is 3, total is 9. In the second example, average is 5, total is 5. Here, we are changing the logic, right? So if we are looking for the total, this is the top character. But if we're looking for the average, this is the top character. Cool. Yes, thank you, Dave. Anything else, guys? No? Let's do question number 3. Descending order. We got a list of an array of strings. Each element of the string represents a number, and we want to return a number resulting of sorting these strings in descending order. It's a bit tricky, right? I think, before doing that, let me see if some of you did what someone told me that, okay, that's correct. Right, I see, right, sorry. So mod did something interesting, which is not fully correct, even though it works. I'll show you why we shouldn't do what mod did today. I think Megan did the same thing as well. So, first of all, arguments. How many?
It's one argument.
One argument. Name of the argument. Technically speaking, numbers, right? Numbers could be a good name, but I could easily forget that in reality we don't have numbers, we have strings, and that will be vital at some point to get the right answer. Whenever I have this kind of problems, I tend to rename it to string numbers. So then I keep in mind all the time, be careful. This is not pure numbers. I cannot add them. I cannot subtract them. I cannot multiply them. Be careful, right? So then, because I have the list of numbers, I will first of all try to sort the array. Because once I manage to sort the array in descending order, it will be easy to join them and to transform them into a number. And now that's the tricky part. How do I sort an array of strings that are numbers? Well, so I saw some of you did that. What do you think? That's what Mo did. That's what Megan did. Is that correct? It is at some point, because you got the right answer, right? But however, never do that. I could demonstrate quickly how easy it is to break that code. Let's go back to DevTools again. So, let me open a new snippet to prove my theory. If we have an array of numbers, 3, 1, 2, dot sort, what will this return? 1, 2, 3. That's correct. If we have an array of numbers that are strings, 3 to 1, what will this return? 1, 2, 3. Correct. And what if I have an array of numbers as a string of 3, 1, 21?
1, 21, 3.
That's correct.
121, 3.
Bala is correct. You see, that only works. Yes, because it's trying to do some kind of alphabetical order based on the first character, right? That's why this solution is not strong at all. You cannot sort, right? Yeah. Obviously, we can easily solve the problem by adding a callback function. So in other words, if you don't pass any callback function, JavaScript will do its best to sort the array. But that doesn't look good, right? So never trust JavaScript in that respect. it's better to have full control. So number 1, number 2. So then we can convert to numbers. We can do that and return, of course, right? So if we do that, now that clearly works. You see? 1, then 3, then 21. Right? Why? Because before comparing, we convert them to numbers. And then we can subtract them easily. Right? So that was one important aspect. I think there was something else that probably some of you, let me have a look to what you did. Yes, that's interesting. That's interesting because that question was resolved just by, 3 of you, and none of the answers is fully correct neither. Technically speaking, for example, Richard's answer is not fully correct because he's returning a string. Join returns a string, and we expect to return an integer. And this is a problem of the platform. The platform is assuming, in that particular case, that a string and a number are the same. But that's not fully correct. And also, Itamar and Mo, they did something correct. They effectively return a number with parsing. But there is a problem as well with parsing. I'll show you in a minute. Let's solve the problem first. So, as we know, I'm going to do it in one statement, if you want. Short string numbers, string number 1, string number 1, comma, string number 2. So then I can do return number, string number 1, string number is order is descending, right? So it will be string number 2, correct, minus number, string number 1, right? Something like that. Correct. And then after sorting the elements, as Richard, Itamar, and Mo, I believe, suggested, I can join them to have a single string of 93, right? And now, essentially, what you did is that you converted parse int to a number. So that should work without any problem, but that has a hidden issue. That's a classic question on a job interview when you apply to a senior position. So you all used Itamar and Mo parse int. Can we use number? Right? Yes? So number and parse int are equivalent at some point. But then there are some differences. So parse int is way more powerful. I'll give you an example. If I try to do number of 6, what will this return? Number 6. Easy. And what if I have 6a? What will this return? Not a number. Of course. Because what was the result of transforming 6a into a number? That doesn't make sense, right? But what if I do parse int on 6a? Correct. So parse int is way more powerful because it tries to find the numbers within the string, right? So essentially, parse int will iterate on each character of the string, and it will essentially return the first consecutive chain of numbers. So for example, if I do that, it should return 6 for 5, because it finds an A, say, okay, this is too much for me, I'll give up, but then return 6 for 5, right? However, number won't be able to deal with that. That's the subtle difference between parse int and number. But then, the consequence of the of parsing, of using parsing, is performance. Because parsing is way more powerful, it's way slower than number. So if you need to transform millions of strings to numbers, don't use parsing, use number, because it's faster. Right? If the number is not a number, the number method just give up, right? It's very quick. However, parsing will spend a lot of time trying to deal with that, right?
But this will give the wrong answer to us, right? If it's not a number.
Is the wrong answer?
No. If that's got a string in it,
Yeah.
we don't want it to give the answer.
It depends. Generally speaking, we don't, but that's a good point. There are some scenarios, because you may get a question in an interview. Okay, number is better than parsing. Is there any scenario where we could, or what is a good idea to use parsing? Yes. There is one scenario where you could use parsing, and I think I've asked this question like 200 times in my life, and I never got the right answer. So I hope you are the first one to give a good answer if you ever get the question. So generally speaking, when you work with JavaScript, sometimes for some particular reasons that we are not going to discuss now, you want to access CSS from JavaScript. So for example, you want to check what's the top position of your overlay in Coldflix. So you can do that. It goes beyond the scope of this session to explain why, but essentially at some point in your JavaScript, you could get that your top position is 10 pixels, like that. In that particular case, to me, it could be a good idea to use parseInt if I want to, for instance, calculate what's the result of adding 10 pixels plus 30 pixels, right? Why? Because parseInt will be able to deal with that. That's a corner case. It's a bit special, but still valid, right? Cool. So, yeah, as you can see, both are equally valid, but if you know that we are dealing with strings that are numbers and without any weird character in between, just use number instead of parseInt, right?
Got it.
Yep.
Why is it that number label function has a capital N at the beginning, whereas the others are camel case?
The others are camel case. Which are the others, Rich?
Or parseInt, for example.
Oh, yeah. So that's the thing about JavaScript, which is a bit confusing. So JavaScript has some functions and objects that clearly attack to native types. So number is a good example. Number is capital. For example, do you remember how to get the keys of an object? Object keys, correct. And it was with capital O, you remember? Yes. Right? So whenever in JavaScript you want to refer to a native type, like number or object, they use capitals. Otherwise, they use lowercase. I know it's a bit confusing. It's probably not the best thing of the language, but it's what it is. Right?
It looks like a normal word.
Yeah, of course. I mean, parseInt, that's just a function in JavaScript. It's the same as set timeout or set interval. All these things are functions that start with lowercase. The only exception is it's not the only exception, I'm talking too much. But an obvious exception is the native types, number, objects, and things like that, right? Right, so because we got just 20 minutes left, let me quickly have a look to what you did here, in question number 3, I believe. So, yeah. So, for example, Itamar. So, you see the problem with Itamar, right? So, no, actually, that's interesting. Look, so, Itamar, you got a penalty here because he created a new variable, but he didn't initialize it, right? What is the let?
Yeah.
Right? That's an unnecessary penalty, first of all. Because even if you forget to put the let, as soon as you evaluate it, it will tell you, right? Hey, new array, what's that? Where's that coming from? Oh, I forgot to put let, right? This type of thing we should look, right? So that's a very interesting pattern. We've never done that before, but that's actually very powerful in JavaScript. And that works. That works. So in JavaScript, we can transform an array of strings into an array of numbers simply by doing that. It's a shorthand. It's pretty useful, right? That's the same thing as doing all the map thingy that I did here. Right? No, sorry, I didn't introduce any map here. I did map before. But anyway, so what he's doing is, first of all, he's transforming the strings to numbers. And then once the numbers are proper numbers and not the string numbers, he sorts them, he joins them, and then he returns the number version of the string. Right? This is very elegant. My only concern here is empty space, missing let, and parsing instead of number. Apart from that, this is very elegant because, again, he's just transforming from a string to numbers once. In my case, I'm transforming from a string to number multiple times, which is not that efficient. So in that case, in that particular aspect, Itamar solution is more efficient than mine. And then Richard, so you see, that's the problem we mentioned before. So he's sorting strings, which is okay for this particular case because all the strings are between 1 and 9. As soon as we have number 10, 11, 12, that won't work. And also, he's returning a string, but we're expecting to return a number. No, sorry, the number is here. Sorry. No, sorry, that's my fault. So that's completely correct. At the beginning, I didn't read that correctly. So number is here, right? So that's correct. Yes, ignore that comment I said before. So he's essentially transforming everything into a number. This is why sometimes creating variables is so useful, because it's easier to read. I can clearly see that Itamar at the end transformed everything into number. With this approach, which to be honest is the same thing I did, so no excuses, it's a bit hidden to notice, hard to notice that essentially, after doing all the tricks, we want to transform into a number, right? But apart from that, that's really good. And finally, Mo, in 2 lines, right? So that's the problem we mentioned. So first of all, he's using sort without any argument, so that will effectively fail with big numbers. And then because he's not controlling how we're going to sort the array, he's using reverse, because by default sort orders the array in an ascending order, but we want descending order, so he reversed the array, right? You know, all these things. Any question?
Is it a problem, this approach to reverse?
Well, that's a bit unnecessary. The problem is not with the reverse, the problem is with sort, because sort will fail as soon as any of the numbers is above 9. Well, we explained that a minute ago, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is what we explained.
Convert it into a number then.
Correct.
Map it into a number.
Correct. You have to map it into a number, otherwise it will work from 1 to 9, but it won't work from 10, 11, 12, and so on, right?
You can use numbers and parse it the same function. You can use them together.
You can use both, but I don't see any reason why we should use parse int, to be honest.
No, like Itamar.
Itamar. Let me have a look. Itamar. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. That's not even consistent because that line number 2 is very clever, but then he's ruining everything at the end by putting parse in. So just use number all the time. It's simpler. It's better. It's more efficient.
So
right?
in someone's case, he doesn't need to do anything in the end, as he has already converted that.
Yes, correct. So he's first transforming the array of strings into an array of numbers. Because he has an array of numbers, then he can easily sort the array without having to transform them again. Right?
And I'm also talking about the return.
The return. Yes, we need to do that because when we do dot join, we get a string.
Right.
It's a number as a string with quotes. But we want to return a pure number. Right? Anything else, guys, in that question? No? Okay, let's do question number 4. How much time we got left? We got 16 minutes. Question number 4. Get average score. That should be an easy one, right? So this is rest parameter. So how many arguments do we have? 2. Wrong.
We only have 5, but we can make it 2.
We don't know how many arguments do we have. 1. No, clearly not 1. Aisha. No, wrong. So on the first example, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the second, 1, 2, 3. On the third, 2. That's what? That's correct. Because we don't know how many arguments do we have, we can use the rest parameter. We'll do a workshop about rest parameter, but essentially how the way it works is, The first one, we know the first one. What's the first argument name? Name, fine. And then that's the problem. We don't know if after the name we have 1, 2, 20 parameters. Res, correct. With res we can do dot, dot, dot. Numbers, that's correct, Hazel. So that means that now we are gathering all the numbers from the left-hand side. We are gathering them all. We're transforming them into an array. So on the first case, we have an array of 4 numbers. On the second, an array of 2 numbers. On the last one, an array of 1 number. Because now we have an array of numbers. But now it's very easy, right? We can do return the average score for, how do we display the name? Dollar sign. Name. Curly brackets, name. And then what else? Is. And then how do we get the average? Average.
You haven't defined it, so
right? We need to create a function again, right? We've done that 30 times already. Function, get average, and then numbers, and then that function will return numbers dot reduce total number, and then that will return, thank you for nothing, that will return total plus number. If you want, you can put the 0 here, right? Divided by numbers dot length, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So if we do that, then how do we complete the problem? What do we put here?
Get average.
Get average. No? Yes? No? No? Why not? It is an array already.
You have to do rest parameter in that to make it a single one. So 3 dots.
Here.
Yes.
What do you think? Do you need 3 dots here?
You convert it to an array, now you pass it as an individual.
No, we need to pass
No? We need to pass an array.
No, we need to pass the function.
Oh, it's already an array.
It's already an array.
It's already an array. We've transformed it into an array here, so numbers is already an array. Because we love arrays, then brilliant, right? Because we can easily reduce or map, filter, find whatever we want because it's an array already. So will this work, yes or no? Any penalty?
Yes.
Why?
Second line is too long.
Correct.
Semicolon.
Anything else?
And second line is too long.
Correct. Second line is too long. Let's prove that. So Daniel is right. Right? Probably you hate that message, right?
Yeah.
But that's I mean, generally speaking, to be honest,
You need to math round.
yeah, yes. Yeah, actually, that's correct. That doesn't even work, right? I assumed that was going to work, but it doesn't work. Why the first one doesn't work?
Because you need to round the.
Correct. We need to round the average, right? So,
Yeah.
Put it in the function.
Because there is more than
yeah.
numbers.
Let's solve both problems in parallel. I'm going to create a variable called average equals that thingy, right? So first of all, hopefully line number 3 is not that long anymore. And now, here, we can do math.round. Yeah? And now this is very sexy, right? First of all, we get the rounded average, and then we just display it. So both lines are shorter. Now, all good, no elegance issues. Any question?
Yeah, if we already got the average on the function, why do we use math round? Get another
Because
average?
the first one wasn't working.
Yeah, the first one wasn't working. The first one returned 66.25. And according to the problem, and according to the work scores, no, so this is not explicitly explained. So it's very easy to fail, right? So it doesn't mention anything about rounding the number. So that's probably, we should probably include that on the description. I'll change that afterwards, right? Because otherwise the first time, you will always fail. I'll fail as well, right? Yeah, but apart from that, once you get the average, then you just display it, right? So easy. Any question?
Yeah, Ricardo, if you put past int, will it still hit 66?
Say it again?
If you put past int instead of math.round, because there's decimal point, will it still get 66? The top answer.
That's a good question. Probably yes.
And also you could use like...
Yeah. So
No.
look, that's correct. That's technically speaking correct, because parse int, again,
Just the integer.
will do its best to get the integer. But what happens if we got that? You ruin it, Mo. You see? Because again, parse int, we say, is 6 a number? Yes. Is 6 a number? Yes. Is data something valid as an integer? No. It will be floor, correct. It will be a very expensive way to use floor, correct. Don't use that. Anything else? No? So let's have a quick look to what you did here. So Jaf. You see the problem. So Jaf ignore the fact that we can pass the name of the user. So he captured all the values, and then he tried to get the name, which is the first element of the array, and then he removed the name using shift. So he has a plain list of numbers. It's a bit complicated, right? So all this mess is because he ignored the fact that, for example, what Itamar did at the bottom, right? That we can simply have a first argument with a name, and that's it. It's important to notice that in 2019, this doesn't work on the other way around. In other words, if we have a function, get scores, name scores, right? Or I don't remember, get score, well, whatever the name of the function was, we can do that. That works. We know that. But does it work on the other way around? Can we do that? That makes sense, right?
Don't think so, no.
No, but listen, this is not crazy, right? Here we said, get all the values, all the arguments, except the last one. I want to say the last one in a different variable. That doesn't work in modern JavaScript yet. I have strong feelings that will be added to the standard within the next couple of years. But today, this is not allowed, right? So if... Yeah.
With that in mind, because if we have multiple sets of
Yeah.
inputs, variable inputs coming in, then Jav's solution is a bit more...
Yeah, correct. So,
flexible.
yeah, correct. In that case, Jav's solution is better, because Jav's solution essentially, he got all the arguments, get all the args here, and then he knows that the name is get all the arguments of get arguments.length -1. So here's the last one, and then eventually he removes the last one, and then so correct. So in that case, this is a bit more powerful if we have the example on the other way around. But in that particular aspect, that we know the name is the first argument, that's a bit more complicated. So Itamar, he gets the average, and then he rounds the result. Pretty much the same thing. Still not happy about the empty line. Apart from that, nothing to complain. Richard. So Richard, he's using a for loop. And then interestingly, you see, so he also ignored the name of the user. But to avoid the problem, you see his array starts from index number 1. You see? So he's skipping the first one, the first element on the array. Right? And apart from that, yes, all good as well. And then more, let me try to understand that. So more try to get the average math.round. You see, that's a bit confusing from an indentation point of view. Yeah, I believe you got a penalty here. Probably if that's what you have, you should create a variable or move that to a new line. I don't know, but that's a bit confusing. I don't know what that length belongs to. It belongs to scores, but it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard to read, in my opinion. And then Rafa, he got another probably penalty here. So that should be moved to a new line. Should close here, right? And then, so he got the total, and then also Rafa got a penalty here, right? We need the spaces surrounding the operators, right? All these things. Apart from that, all good. And A cell, finally A cell, or not, yeah, finally A cell. So she, yeah, so she get the average score math.floor. That's wrong as well, right? Floor is not the average. Floor is the closest integer below the given floating number. So we should use round. It works in that case, but it may not work in other scenarios, right? And also, again, look after indentation. Don't reduce, that's fine. But then, so she's reducing first, and then she's dividing by the length. So, I don't know. I find this a bit complicated to read. Cool. Guys, let's do last question, because we got 5 minutes. 5 minutes less. Combine higher order functions. That's one of the most important questions about functions, because it combines the two types of higher order functions. If it's the first time you hear the words higher order functions, please watch the workshop we recorded some months ago to explain what a higher order function is. How many arguments do we have? 2. Wrong. 1. What's the name of the argument? Function. Function 1. Yes. So we just have one argument, guys. Look. You see? That's the argument. It's a function. Right? And what our combined higher order function method returns? Another function. That's correct. Do we receive any argument on the inner function?
Yes.
What?
Function 1.
Function 1?
No. It's whatever the 3 is, you with that a label.
Number. Yes, correct. Correct. And then, what do we return? Another function? No.
That's it. And you don't put in the expression.
Yeah? So now, we need to invoke the function 1, and we need to pass number multiplied by y3. y5.
It's hard coded.
Yeah. So the way to read that is our function on the left hand side will return another function that will be invoking at some point. So that's the first thing. The function invokes another function, returns another function, sorry. That's why our combined HOF function returns another function. The second function receives a number as an argument, 3, 7, 2, right? And then eventually, we need to do something. So we need to invoke the argument. In the first example, whatever number we return, we pass here, it will be eventually returned. If we pass 1, it returns 1. If we pass 2, it will return 2, right? So we need to pass a number, it will return 15. If we pass 15, it will return 15. Because we got 3, what can we do with 3 to return 15? Well, we can multiply by 5. Technically speaking, we could add 12 as well, right? Because 3 plus 12 gives us 15. But let's have a look to the next example. In the second example, how long? Oh, 2 minutes. Let's see if that works. Yes, missing semicolon. Here. Yeah. So on the second example, before it times out, we have another callback function, and the number is 7. So we need to do something with 7. So whenever we pass that number here, the result of multiplying it by 2 is 70. In other words, n has to be 35, right? Yeah. Because 35 multiplied by 2 is 70. How do we transform from 7 to 35? 70 by 7. No. 7 times 5. So again, we need to multiply by 5. In here, we didn't know if we had to multiply by 5 or add 12. But here, we already know we have to multiply by 5. Because if we have 7, 7 multiplied by 5 is 35. If we pass 35 here, 35 multiplied by 2 is 70. And finally here, we got a number. And this is the most complex one. I'm going to return 13. But let's see if the theory is correct. if we multiply 2 by 5 is 10. If we pass a 10 here, 10 plus 3, 13. So the theory is correct. It failed for some of you because some of you is going to time out. You multiply by 5 afterwards. Oh, it time out. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, well, I'll explain that in the future. But yeah, anyway, that's the way to fix it. This was the most complicated question on the higher order functions, right? Because it combines function as an argument and function as a return statement. You need to master both. What you did here, so pretty much the same thing, I believe, right? Yes, so Itamar and Mo, you see, function, return, function, literally the same thing, right? Any question? Yeah, that's correct. I'm not sure if you get a penalty about that, to be honest.
So what's correct? It's a long one or my one?
I think Itamar one is more correct. Because when you create a function, look here, right? Even in your exercise, you declare the function name, and there is no space between the function name and the parentheses.
But I made it empty because it's anonymous.
It's anonymous, yeah, but still, I find this a bit weird, to be honest. Not sure if you get a penalty or not, but just from the habit of creating an anonymous function, I find this a bit weird, but still, it's not a big thing.
And you can call it something else up there, it's all fine.
Yes, you can put any name here, yeah. That's fine. Yes, that's fine, no problem at all. Anything else, guys? Yeah?
Can you not make that an arrow function because it's an iffy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Can we make an arrow function? Let's do that, guys. So if we have a function called function do stuff, right? So when we invoke do stuff, so if we pass a number and we pass a number n and we return 2 multiplied by n, and then we put 10 here. So then we have a function 1 return function, and then this is the number, and that will return function 1, and then passing. So what will this return, guys?
Yeah.
60. Why 60?
3 times 10.
Correct. Correct. So number will be 10, right? So the first thing we do is we multiply 10 by 3. We got 30. So the function 1 receives 30, and it returns 2 multiplied by 30, which is 60. So that's correct. Let's see if that works. That's correct. Return 60. And then I think Jonan or Rich, not sure who, was asking if we can transform from arrow functions to classic function. We can even try the other way around. So can we transform that into an arrow function?
Yes.
Indeed. We can do return number like that. Even simpler, right? It works. And can we transform the argument, which is an arrow function, into a classic function? Will this work? Yes or no? What do you think? It should work. Of course it should work. That's the same thing, right? So arrow functions and classic functions are equivalent in the majority of the cases. The main exception is using the lexical dis, which is something we'll learn in the second half of the bootcamp. But apart from very exotic cases, they are equivalent, so you can change them, right? I personally find that this is a good example, right? Arrow functions are more convenient because are more precise, shorter, easier to follow, in my opinion. But hey, you may disagree. And also, last question of the day, because we are a bit out of time. So, even though that works, what happened if I do that? Right, so if I run the snippet again, it works. Breakpoints, guys. So let's see if we understand the execution order. For example, Dave.
Oh, I was trying to figure it out, but I think it starts at line number 3.
Okay.
And then moves to line number 4.
Yep.
Line number 8. Line number 9.
Wrong. Jonan, are you still there?
Yeah, just there.
Any feedback?
I get lost with these higher order, to be honest.
Okay. So Rafa, 8, 9, 3, 4. Wrong.
8, 3, 4, 9.
8, 3,
4,
4,
9.
9.
Wrong.
What do you think? Right or wrong?
Right. Different.
I was going to say.
So who?
I was waiting for.
More.
I didn't want to butt in. I wanted everyone to say their part.
Yeah.
8, 3, 4, and Bala as well. Any other? Does anyone else has a different opinion? Either here or remotely? Richard, for example.
Same, I think.
Okay. 8, 3, 4, 9. So I think we all agree it will run line number 8 first, right? So Dave, the first one is never going to be free, because to execute free, we should invoke the function first. So clearly the first one is 8. After running 8, we'll go to the do stuff function, so we'll run free. That's why 9 will never happen before free. Right, Rafa? Because we start running this function. But then we'll return something. And after returning something, line number 4 is not executed immediately. However, after returning it, we execute the inner function. In other words, line number 4 should run next. And because we are running line number 4, as a side effect, we are invoking this. And because of that, we'll be running line number 9 last. So I believe that's correct. Let's prove that. Line number 8, correct. 3, correct. 4, correct. 9, that's correct. You're right. And one more question. And what if we do something a bit different? What if we do let second function equals, and then we invoke it afterwards? So that's literally the same thing. I just split the functionality. I create a reference to the inner function, and then I'll invoke it afterwards. So if we do that, guys, very last question, I promise. So what's the execution ASL now?
And then
11. Wrong. Ashley?
8.
8.
11.
8.
No, sorry. 8.
Yeah.
11,
Mm-hmm.
9, no. 4, 8, 3, 11, 5, 9.
So Bala,
11.
11. 11 is wrong. We mentioned it here. Aisel. 11 shouldn't be the first one.
8,
8, 3, 4,
11,
8, 3, 4, 9, 11 or 11, 9? 11, 9. 8, 3, 4, 11, 9. So, what do you think? Do you agree or not? Wrong.
9, 11.
So, Daniel, 8, 3, 4, 9, 11. 8, 3, 4, 9, 11. Wrong. Again, if I'm wrong and any of you is right, you'll get 3 points on the board challenge.
I'll give my answer, yeah?
Okay. Mo?
Yeah, okay. 8, 11,
8, 11,
3, 4, 9.
3, 4, 9. Wrong.
I think we have to start with 8.
Can I have a go?
You think you start at 11? Okay, the thing is, if we start at 11, you'll get the points. You and Aisel. Yeah, that's it, right? Yeah, Dave?
8,
Yeah?
8, 3,
8, 3,
9, 11, 4.
8, 3, 9, 11, 4. Wrong.
I'm
Poppy?
But actually it starts off at 3 because you haven't returned, you declared a variable but you haven't.
So you think we start at 3?
Yeah.
Wrong. Richard?
I'm lost.
Right. Anyone else? You're all wrong, I believe. Some of you are close. So who hasn't participated? Well, it doesn't matter. If you want to participate, that's fine. So I'll tell you why I believe you are all wrong. The first line is line number 8. Right? Because that's the first thing. It cannot be line number 11. Because this will run sequentially. So the first line is line number 8. Then we invoke the do stuff function. So the next line will be line number 3. I mean, the thing is, we've done that before, right?
Yeah.
I haven't changed that piece, right? So it cannot be 11 next. No, it cannot be 11. That's impossible. You need to be 3. 8 and 3. So I agree with Dave, Daniel, Bala, and Ashley so far. But then line number 4 won't run yet because it's a callback function. That will be invoked at some point later on, right? So, and this is where I believe everybody failed. So that's why my bet is 8, 3, 11, 4, 4, 9. I think that's it, right? 8, 3, 11, 4, 9. Why 8, 3? Oh, sorry. 8, 3, 11, 4, 9. 8, then we do stuff, 3, then we'll continue with the flow. This function hasn't been executed yet, so we'll go down 11, then we invoke second function, so we stop here, 4, and eventually we invoke function 1, that is the argument, 9 will be the last line. Let's see if I'm correct or if I miserably failed. 8, 3, 11, 4, 9. Right, so that's correct. Right? So that's why I keep encouraging you, especially when you do a board challenge, add breakpoints, add lots of random breakpoints, and try to figure out what's the execution order. Right? Anything else, guys?
No, what are you using to test the code? Because I was trying to, like what you just used now.
The tools.
How can I use it without running anything on it?
Without rolling, you don't roll anything. So you create a new snippet. That was the very first workshop we recorded on the 8th of, but it's on YouTube. Yeah, so watch the workshop, watch that video, it's a short video, I believe. If you have any problem, let me know and we'll catch up. Cool? Right, anything else, guys? John and Richard, anyone here?
Okay.
No?
Thanks a lot.
Cool, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for watching.